Well, this time for all ages comes from the Jewish tradition, and it's probably from the 18th century. And but the story comes from many traditions, but it's most well known in the Jewish tradition. And it's this story of a king, this powerful leader who has everything. But one of his most prized possessions is this beautiful, large diamond. And he spends hours each day looking at this diamond, and he almost becomes obsessed with it, looking at the beauty of this diamond because it's perfect, it's large, it's flawless. And he loves it, and he touches it, and he doesn't allow anyone else in the room where it is. And he sometimes lets people see it from a distance, but he's so obsessed with it, he is the only person that enters this room. One day he enters the room, and he picks up the diamond, and he's looking forward with anticipation to the beauty of this diamond. And he notices a scratch on it. And his first reaction is, how did that happen? How did that happen? And then he tried to think, who can I blame for this? Because that's a kind of human trait. I want to blame something when something goes wrong. But he realized he was the only person that was in that room. And he looks at the diamond and he's devastated. So he calls some of his best advisors to there and say, how can we fix this? We need to fix it. But I'm worried that when they try and fix it, this may break. So they call all the finest diamond cutters, which is a profession for people who cut these diamonds, very delicate process. And he calls them from all over his country, and they come and they look at the diamond and they say, well, I could try and fix it, but I'm really scared that it might break. And that's what he hears again and again and again. And he finally, this old woman who's a diamond cutter comes in and looks at the diamond and says, you know, I think I can fix it. And I said, really, please fix it. She said, I think it might even be better than before. And the king's shocked by that. Like, how could it be better than before? It was flawless. He loved it the way it was. She said, but I have to have one condition, that you give me 2 weeks to work on it and you do not interrupt me. You do not come and see how the work's progressing. You need to let me do my work in complete and absolute peace. The king thinks about this, can he trust her? But, she could possibly fix the diamond, but what happens if something goes wrong in the meantime? But he realizes he has to take that risk, and because he might gain something from it. So he agrees, and the old woman diamond cutter takes it away and works diligently. She's working like 16 hours a day, sleeping, eating, working diligently on it. And she's really happy with the results. So after 2 weeks, she wraps it up carefully and takes it back to the king. And the king's got this unveiling, and his advisors are there, and he's really excited. So he opens it very gently, and he looks at the diamond. And where the scratch was, she's used that as a stem and engraved this beautiful rose in the diamond. And the king realizes, yes, this is even more beautiful than before. And he rewards the old woman for her beautiful craftsmanship. And I love that story because sometimes things do break in our lives. Sometimes we do have struggles in our life. And somehow through those struggles, we can create something more beautiful, something more worthwhile, more meaning in our life through those struggles. And I love the fact that she could not repair the diamond fully, but she could modify it. She could transform it perhaps into something even more beautiful. Today is one of my favorite rituals that we have in our Unitarian Universalist tradition, the flower communion. I want to just talk as an introduction, because maybe some of you are not familiar with the flower communion. And I want to just give you some of the history, because I think once we know some of the history of rituals, it can make it all the more meaningful for us. The flower communion service was created by Norbert Čapek, who founded the Unitarian Church in Czechoslovakia, or what was Czechoslovakia, which is now the Czech Republic. And he introduced this special service to his church on June 4th, 1923. And for some time, he had felt the need for something symbolic that would bring his people, that would bind his people together. And the format had to be one that would not alienate any who had forsaken other religious traditions. The traditional Christian communion with bread and wine was unacceptable to members of his congregation because of the strong reaction to Catholicism. So he turned to the native beauty of the countryside for elements of a communion which would be genuine for the folks in his community. And this simple service was a result. It's such a success that it was held yearly just before the summer recess of the church, just as we are doing here. But we reduce ourselves, we don't completely recess. And Norbert Chapek spent some time in the States, and it was in the States that he met his Czech-born wife, Maya Oktafek. They met actually in New York City while he was studying for his PhD here, and it was at her urging that Norbert left the Baptist ministry and became a Unitarian. She was a lifelong Unitarian, having grown up in Bohemia, which is part of Transylvania now. The Chapeks returned to Czechoslovakia in 1921 and established a dynamic liberal church in Prague. And Maya Chapek was ordained in 1926. And by 1941, the church that Maya and Norbert ran had 3,200 members. It was the largest Unitarian church in the world, and still would be 3,200 members. That'd be quite a pledge campaign. The Flower Communion was brought to the United States by Maya Chapek during her tour of the United States and introduced the Flower Communion to the Unitarian Church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But due to the Second World War, Maya was unable to return to Prague. And it was not until the war was over that she found out about her husband Norbert's death in the Nazi concentration camp of Dachau. He was killed during medical experiments on him at the Dachau camp. He had resisted the Nazis in many ways, including sheltering Jews and other refugees who were being sought by the Nazis. So let us take a moment of silence now to honor the resistance and compassion of Norbert Chapek and all who resisted the evil oppression of the Nazi regime. I remind everyone that today, June 6th, is D-Day, when the Allied forces invaded Normandy and was, in many ways, was a key event in ending the Second World War. We think of all those who lost their lives and sacrificed on that day and throughout that war to resist the oppression of the Nazis. So from this beginning for the Flower Communion in this 1923 that Norbert brought, this man of compassion, this man of justice, this man of courage, he brought this communion of beauty. And the service has spread through many of our Unitarian Universalist churches and been adapted in many ways. The way we will do it today, especially online, will not be the same. It was done in Prague in 1923. And you were asked and been reminded many times, could you bring 2 flowers of your choice, either from your gardens, your fields, your neighbor's garden, but I hope you ask permission if you get them from your neighbor's garden, or even your favorite grocery store, or you can draw a picture of flowers, something that symbolizes beauty to you. One flower you brought will symbolize what each of us brings to this religious community and how we come here by our own free will. The second flower symbolizes the gifts each of us receives from this gathered community. This symbolizes the gifts of grace we receive regularly from one another and give to one another. I'll now invite our worship associate, John Kim, to give a reflection.
Thank you, Brian. It is a stunning contrast to hear about the history of the Flower Communion and the Unitarian Church. There's the stark polar opposites of Norbert Čapek dying in the Nazi concentration camp against the beauty of this ceremony that he and Maya created. And that contrast of beauty and sorrow is what we have all around us in the world today. Every day we read about horrible news in the world, the crimes, the wars, the fighting. It's easy to miss enjoying the flowers, or worse, to enjoy them but feel guilty for it. I mean, with all the suffering in the world, isn't it frivolous to be smelling flowers and celebrating? But I think about how Maya brought the flower ceremony to her congregants and put joy and happiness first, despite the trials. And I think that smelling the flowers and enjoying beauty is part of the struggle, because it's what we struggle for, so that everyone can enjoy and share in that beauty. Now, I have no personal connection to World War II and what Čapek went through, but I connect to the terrible struggles in Korea that followed. My late grandfather Bangkok was born in what is now North Korea. He studied dairy farming in Japan and then had an innovative farm north by the Yalu River. After liberation from the Japanese, he wisely moved his family to the south. But his brother stayed in the north and was an active member of the Communist Party there. When the communists swept through the south, he was brought before a communist tribunal, and they put him in front of a firing squad for being a Japanese collaborator. The squad actually pulled the triggers, but it turns out their guns were unloaded. It was a show of intimidation rather than execution. And he felt that it was his brother's involvement as a communist that saved him. But later on, they did this to him again, with him never knowing if next time the guns would be loaded. And he survived, continued his family. But when I think of a past like that, my own experiences and accomplishments can seem very small. But it just makes me think about how easily even people of the same family can be divided by the extremes of politics. And somehow for my grandfather, this was this connection to his communist brother that saved him. Bangkok was born in what is now North Korea, but his first dairy farm was actually on land that's now a part of China. And in 2005, I went with my father to go to that spot. My father had not been there since he was a small child. We couldn't go into North Korea, but there was a small outreach station in China that was run by North Koreans, an embassy of sorts. I'm not fluent in Korean, and they wouldn't share much anyway, but we could buy some handcrafted North Korean trinkets. And I tried to use that to experience, to feel their view, even knowing what terrible wrongs their government has done and continues to do. Korea is still divided, and there are other divisions that cut across the world: Palestine and Israel, black and white in the US, and many more. What Čapek fought to convey is how beauty and sharing can cut through these divisions, though. Many divisions remain, but I also think that there are many divisions that have been bridged over time and can be bridged when we see each other's beauty and humanity. Since my grandfather's time, a lot has changed. My father grew up and came to the US. I was born, got married, and divorced. I have a diverse mix of friends and family now with different ways of sharing. 2 days ago, I took part in a Catholic communion for the first time. I was attending the 8th grade graduation of my significant other Blythe's son. And as a Catholic school, I didn't know this, everyone attending was invited to participate in communion. part of graduation, I guess. These two flowers are from the graduation celebrations this week. And I think about how in the past, even in Chapek's time, the divisions of Catholic and Protestant, let alone Unitarian Universalist, were horrendous. That's a huge divide and sometimes violent. But today, many of those barriers have been broken down by growing understanding between different religions. That I could take part in a Catholic communion without getting as sharp a looks. And divisions remain in our world. That must be addressed for our work in peace and justice. And in that movement, sharing of simple human joys like these flowers is vital. It's not a distraction. So look on and to smell and touch these flowers. I enjoy their beauty, and also my mind goes out to my celebrations this week and how different they were. Every family and community has different ways of sharing. The Catholics have their way of sharing in communion, but what I'm so impressed with our way that was brought to us by Chapek is how we share with each other different things, different flowers that are all individual to individual. I look out over the video now and I see, how many different people and flowers that we have, and it's a potent reminder of our diversity and our different celebrations of Astara's son's graduation and Melanie's goddaughter's graduation, Robin Jean's newest granddaughter, Richard's wife's knee surgery, and Lee's friend's breast cancer. These are all, very different stages in life and very different people, but we're all bringing together these different parts. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mariana, and thank you, John, for beautiful, powerful reflection. I'd like to read a poem now by the Unitarian Universalist minister, Thomas Rhodes. We come in a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some of us grow in bunches, some of us grow alone, some of us are cupped inward, and some of us spread ourselves out wide. Some of us are old and tougher than we appear. Some of us are still in bud. Some of us grow low to the ground, and some of us stretch towards the sun. Some of us feel like weeds sometimes. Some of us carry seeds sometimes. Some of us are prickly sometimes. Some of us smell. And all of us are beautiful. What a bouquet of people we are. Those are the words of Unitarian Universalist minister Thomas Rhodes. I understand the limitations of the flower communion on Zoom. I'm going to ask you to do something here. I'm going to ask you to all get in gallery view if you can. And if there's a little window up, or a little icon up at the top right-hand side that you can click, and it will probably say standard, speaker, or gallery. So I'll ask you all to select gallery. You see plenty of me. So I want you to see gallery because I really want to see you the beautiful scene of everyone in front of us and the flowers that they've brought. This is that beautiful bouquet of people that Thomas Rhodes was talking about. And take time to look at people's faces. Really look at them. And if you want to scroll to the right or left so you can see other people, and invite you all to turn your camera on if you can, so you can really see this beautiful bouquet. and look at the diversity of faces, the diversity of flowers, the diversity of people's rooms, the diversity of people's backgrounds, and enjoy it. Enjoy the flowers in people's hands, the flower in people's hair, the flowers in front of people's faces. Enjoy it all. Because communion is the bond that unites us with each other and with the divine that each of us experiences in different ways. Communion is an act of radical interdependence. And the significance of the flower communion is that no two flowers are alike. So no two people are alike, no two experiences are alike, yet each has a contribution to make, and two together, different flowers create a beautiful bouquet. Our common bouquet would not be the same without the unique addition of every one of you here. And a flower bouquet would not be the same without the contribution of every flower that's part of it. And thus it is with our church community. It would not be the same without each of you. And every one of us contributes something and receives something from this community. Thus, the servants is a statement of the richness, diversity, and beauty of our community. And we're going to symbolically exchange flowers. We show our willingness to walk together in our search for meaning, disregarding all that might divide us. Each person gives and receives a flower, thus symbolizing our shared celebration and community. This communion of sharing is essential to a free people in a free religion. So I invite you to select one of your flowers and closely examine it. Really look at it. You've probably glanced at it before. Touch it gently. Feel its texture. Smell it. I'm lucky, I've got roses. Smell it. Take a deep breath. And then I invite you to bring the flower forward to the camera lens in your computer and see if you can see it closely. And then again, I invite you to look at your screen and see all the beauties of the flowers there, and scroll to the left and right so you can see everyone's flowers. Take the time to really look at those flowers and look at the beauty both of the person and holding the flower and the flower itself. Look at the diversity and the beauty within that diversity. And I offer these words of Reverend Norbert Chapek. He wrote these words as a consecration, which is a blessing of the flowers that he did in his church in the 1920s and 1930s. And consecration is a dedication to a deity or to one's highest ideals. These are the words of Norbert Chapek. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessings on thee, thy messengers of fellowship and love. These messengers of affection and devotion to thy holy will, may they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and gifts, we are one. May they also remind us the value of comradeship, fellowship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish our friendships as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship with them. But may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in the world. Amen. Those are the words of Reverend Norbert Chapek. So I invite you to take your other flower and hold that close to your camera lens. And take some time to look at this new flower. It may be very different from the previous flower, or it may be similar. Again, scroll through gallery view to right and left to see other people's gifts. And I invite you to pull that flower back gently to you and closely examine it. Notice the similarities to the previous flower. Notice the differences to the previous flower. Gently touch it and feel it. Again, noticing the similarities and differences. And smell it. And now look at your screen and look at everybody on there, the person with their flower. You can hold up both, the one you brought to the camera and the one you pulled back, symbolizing the gift you bring and the gifts you receive. And think, look at your experiences with each of these people. What do they mean to you? What experiences have you had? What gifts have they brought to you? What gifts have you brought to them? And savor it. Because that is the ultimate blessing of religious community. Savor this moment. I'd like to invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer again. And this is a communion prayer written by Reverend Norbert Čapek for the flower communion he used to share in Prague. In the name of providence, which implants the seed, the future of the tree, and in the hearts of men and women, the longing for people living in love. In the name of the highest in whom we move and who makes the mother and the father, the brother and the sister what they are. In the name of sages and great religious leaders who sacrifice their lives to hasten the coming of peace and justice, let us renew our resolution. Our resolution sincerely to be real brothers and sisters, regardless of any kind of bar which estranges us from one another. In this holy resolution, may we be strengthened, knowing that we are God's family, that one spirit, the spirit of love, unites us, and may we endeavor for a more perfect and more joyful life. Amen. When we explore the idea of beauty and diversity, we tend to think of beauty amongst the differences in people, and we've experienced that within our community today. But as John touched on in his earlier reflection, how do we find beauty in those variety of experiences we have, like the Second World War, like something like the Dachau concentration camp, like the devastation of something like D-Day, destruction which led to a greater good, but there was a lot of destruction. And how does beauty impact things like justice, addressing oppression, addressing racism, addressing the huge amounts of violence that go in the world, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Yemen, whether it's in our own country, in neighborhoods in our own country? I don't know. And I look like, what does beauty mean to me as I try and address these huge and small issues that are all in my life? I think beauty finding connection to beauty, whether it be in difficult times or joyous times, but especially difficult times, can help inspire us, can comfort us, can cope, and gives us that purpose for the work we do in justice, gives that purpose for living. That embracing of beauty inspires us that life is worth living, life is worth redeeming, life is worth resurrecting from the worst of what happens in the world. And we have to hold both Norbert Chapek's beautiful flower communion and the horror of the concentration camp together. And know that beauty can overcome it. The fact that we are celebrating Dr. Chapek, the fact that we are celebrating the flower communion now shows that his life transcended the barbaric nature of the concentration camp to make life fulfilling for each of us here today and for Unitarian Universalists across the world. And the thing about beauty as we experience is it brings us into this present moment. It does not focus us in the past of the struggles that we've had or the difficulties we've had, the illnesses we've had, the losses we've had. Beauty brings us into this moment. And it is not about worrying and anxiety about the future, what's going to happen if the pandemic, what's going to happen as we come back together in person as a church. Beauty is not about that. Beauty brings us to this present moment. I think what beauty can encourage us to do is the Benedictine, the founder of the Benedictine monastery said that listen with the ear of your heart. Listen with the ear of your heart. I invite you to go deeper and think about what's the ear of your heart? What are you listening for? And what do you want to listen to? I want to listen more with curiosity than judgment. I want to listen so I recognize the barriers that artificially separate me from others. I want to listen with a heart that opens me to vulnerability, to risk-taking, so that I may connect with people I might not otherwise connect with. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the 19th century Unitarian, says this, and these are the words I'd like to close with. Those roses under my windows make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is no simply the rose. It's perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, the whole life acts. In the full-blown flower, there is no more. In the leafless root, there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But we postpone or remember. We do not live in the present, but with reverted eye lament the past, or heedless of the riches that surround us, stand on tiptoe to foresee the future. We cannot be happy or strong until we live with nature in the present above time. Those are the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I invite us all, let us live in the beauty of the moment. Let go of the struggles and hardships of the past. Let go of the horrors of history. Live into the beauty of the moment. And let go of our worries and anxiety for the future. Live into the beauty of the moment. Live into the presence of the natural beauty that surrounds us. Breathe out our tension and worries. Breathe in the inspirational scent of the beautiful diversity available to us in this moment.